how to handle the transgender issues with minors at schools. It's a very serious topic. I'm Jill Simonian from PragerU Kids. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. This, if you do not know her already, this is Amy Bohn from PERC, and I'm going to be so forward as to say you pretty much know everything about this very serious and confusing and misguided directives that are happening in our education system regarding the transgenderism issues with minors in our schools. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I love the work you guys do here at PragerU
Thank you.
Kids.
Thank you. We try to give positive solutions for parents, not only, of course, with our content, our videos, our books, and our shows for kids, but also now with solutions speaking to you all, parents and teachers, about positive steps that we can take in our schools. Because there are positive steps, right?
There's so many positive steps, and there's so many ways parents can be empowered of what to do and how to handle the situations.
Okay, and I'm excited. I'm trying not to be too giddy because this is a serious topic. But to start, what does PERC stand for? The name of your organization is PERC, and it's a nationwide group.
Right, so PERC stands for the Protection of the Educational Rights of Kids. We are a nonprofit primarily based in California, but the issues that happen here impact the entire country, and they're spilling into other states. So our work definitely has nationwide impact.
Yeah, and that's something that as a California mom, I mean both of us, California moms, we've experienced it firsthand, where I think the rest of the country is finally starting to understand what happens in California does not stay in California. So let's jump in here. Let's jump in.
And I'm excited too, by the way. Maybe just as excited as you.
Yeah.
Because I feel like parents feel a little stuck on this issue.
Yes.
And the more resources and information and education we offer to them, the more they actually can know what to do and how to handle what's going on for the kids and how to protect them. So I'm excited as well.
Absolutely. And to do it without fear.
Right.
We'll talk about it all. We're going to talk about it all. We're going to talk about it all. First, let's jump in right now. Your tips for tackling transgender topics in schools. The first tip that I have here that you gave me was to review every single survey that your school or district is giving. What do surveys have to do with any of this?
Okay, that's a great question. So for most parents, they're assuming a survey is like whether they're going to attend school the next year or not, and just kind of basic information, contact information about their child. However, what's really happening is there's all these different support plans and surveys that are being given to children related to their sexuality, their mental health, and possibly also their gender identity and expression. And those surveys are often not given to parents first before it's given to the child. Right. And that's what we're talking about. And so what parents can do about that is they can actually request from the school to see a copy of all surveys and information going to the child. And without the parent asking, sometimes the schools are actually hiding those surveys and not allowing the parents to see or not being forthcoming that they're even giving these surveys to the children. And the thing that's significant about the surveys and why we recommend for parents to request them, to review them, is sometimes these surveys can actually be what's called support plans. And so a child who may be struggling with gender confusion or gender dysphoria might have, some challenges at school. And so the school is then creating these surveys or these plans that move a child to a referral outside of the school without a parent knowing or consenting to this. So it's a really big issue, and our recommendation for parents, just a really simple tip, is to review every survey that comes through from the school and to request anything the school may be sending to their child that they're not aware of or have not been notified of.
For the whole academic year. You can do that at the beginning of the year, correct?
Correct. You can do that from the beginning of the year. You can do it in the middle of the year. And typically school districts have, some kind of policy in place for how they distribute information to parents. And so you're going to piggyback on whatever that policy is and add to it a request to review all surveys. And this is protected by federal laws too, just so you know, where parents have a right to review curriculum and surveys that are being given to their children, and that is protected by federal laws.
Good. That's good to know. Excellent to know. And in fact, on a personal story, that was something that caught me off guard a few years ago, and it was one of the propelling moments, I say, to get me to pull my children out of public school because my third grader at the time got the survey where the first question was, are you non-binary? And she did not know what that meant. And she came home and asked me, and I didn't know the survey was happening. And then when I did investigating, it's a whole rabbit hole that you discover. Yeah. Yeah. So great advice. Okay. Number 2, you say review the curriculum online or in person. Curriculum, reading, writing, and math. It's not that anymore. We know that, right?
It's supposed to be reading, writing, and math. And you know what? We have to say this ironically. Some of the schools, for example, in California, they actually have statistically very, very low scores when it comes to academics. And honestly, I think part of the reason those scores are so low is because their focus is on these political issues or these things that have a bias to them, instead of teaching children and emphasizing they need to be, concerned about math and those core studies. Instead, they're focusing on this and even disciplining children if they don't, follow the line and stay in conformity to whatever the school is teaching. So that being said, reviewing through the curriculum online and in person, this is something where, again, the schools and school districts, and it's not just in California, this is across the entire country. We're hearing about it in pretty much every state where this is happening. They hide curriculum information in programs such as SEL.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Yes.
I know about this, but I'm going to let you talk about this because it's good stuff. Listen up.
Okay, so social emotional learning. So this is where, again, they're hiding actual gender ideology curriculum in this program. And the second place that they often hide curriculum is in the DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and committees. And so what we advise parents to do is actually, one, review those curriculums, find out what's happening in those subcommittees, and number 2, get involved. So I don't think parents realize they can actually go to their school district, request to be on these committees, so that then the parent is part of driving what curriculum is actually placed in their school and in their school district. And it's as simple as joining the committee. So if it's a DEI committee or the social emotional learning committee, they can then learn what's being approved and pushed to their children via the curriculum.
Yeah.
So another component of that as well is parents have a right to review the curriculum. Not only are we encouraging parents to do that, but they have a right to do that, and that again is protected under federal law.
And that's the part that often gets intimidating because when you're sitting there at the back to school night and you start asking questions in the classroom, I found in the past that a lot of times, and this is not a dig at teachers at all, because trust me, there are countless unbelievable, amazing teachers, but a lot of times the teachers will be very naive about these different SEL and DEI programs that really are melded and infused and embedded within the curriculum. And it is our responsibility to go to would you say the district office and ask? Is that the right route to go?
Yeah, I would say asking for directly to the school district, to their office, and you can, ask the school themselves too, and notify them that you would like to review the curriculum. And it is your right. And so we've shown parents, and it's actually more simple than people realize. So I think that's where, there's a little bit of a misunderstanding that this is so hard to do. How do you handle this? What can you do about it? Well, it can be as simple as writing a very simple paragraph to the school and saying, I am essentially invoking my right as a parent.
Ooh, invoking, there's the word, yes.
To review the curriculum. And you can cite a law. I think this is probably a good place to even mention this.
Go for it, yeah.
You can cite this law, which is called the PPRA, so Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment. This is a federal law. And what you can do with that is you can state that it is your legal right to review curriculum under this law. And it's also your right as a parent to opt out of curriculum and certain activities that are not within your consent as a parent. So you can see how that relates to this issue in such a profound way. And what you can do is literally in the category of the social emotional learning, you can request that the school provide to you and give you access to the curriculum that's being taught to your child. So you invoke this law, you write a letter to the school, very simple paragraph stating the law, stating you're requesting this information. And what the law states is that every school is required to allow you as a parent to give consent prior to them actually subjecting your child to these different forms and curriculum that you don't approve of or wouldn't support. So that prior consent, we're actually telling parents, do that now. So before the school year starts, tell the school that you would like to see the curriculum, invoke this law, let the school know you're aware of this law and you're right as a parent. And the third part about it is you actually are able to opt out then of the curriculum that you review if it's not something that's within your family values and your purview of how you want to raise your children. So it's like super significant.
Yeah, and I love the way, I mean, you lay this all out with your organization on the PERC website, which we will list at the bottom of the screen. But you've done the homework. You've made it very easy to follow to do these steps. Are opt-out forms available in every single state? Because lately in the news we've been hearing different things about, for example, Maryland doesn't allow families to opt out of LGBTQ plus story times anymore. What does the opt-out scenario look like across the country? Do you know?
Well, I mean, I would say one part, again, is going back to the law that protects parents where they can opt out. Even if a school district has a policy that tells a parent you can't opt out, you're not allowed to, that's not true. That's actually, I would say, it's against a parent's fundamental right to raise their children. And it also can violate the First Amendment right that every parent and every child has, as well as the 14th Amendment, which protects parents too, and their right to fundamentally raise their children how they see fit and how they deem best. And the welfare of their child is, of course, it's the legal responsibility of the parent. So yes, schools are saying that. They're trying to tell parents you can't opt out, this is required, but we're trying to educate parents that, yes, they're telling you that, but it's not true. You have a right as a parent to opt out of anything. You can assert what we already talked about, the PPRA law, but you also can assert your right via the First Amendment too. So the First Amendment, of course, as we know, protects everyone's sincerely held religious beliefs, right? So if you have a sincerely held religious belief that is guiding your decision on what you feel like is best for your child or what you can or you want to opt out on, then again, these are ways you can assert yourself as a parent, and you're the one that gets to choose how you raise your child and how you protect your child when it comes to these issues at the school, not the school. And the school is under a legal obligation to parents to notify parents of any of these, we'll talk more about some of those other things the school's required to notify parents of. However, even in the space of curriculum and opting out, the school is not the driving factor. The Constitution is. Parental rights are protected under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution and the First Amendment too. So we can't forget that. So sure, they create policies. I mean, they're going to create policies all day long, but that's a policy. That's not a law, and that's not the Constitution. So parents need to be encouraged that they can request to opt out of things, and it is within their right to do so.
And once we discover what we really are protected by, just like you said, our Constitution, the law, once we really understand how our system is set up, it really does take away that fear factor, I think, because look at the facts. There's nothing to be scared of. There's nothing to be scared of. I want to give you a scenario, mom to mom, because there are so many parents that are just in the middle of, like we say, this very confusing times with directives and policies and school districts and bullies trying to make us to believe things that are in fact not true. Here's a scenario, Amy, as a mom. One of your child's classmates starts requesting that the school address him as a female and decides that he wants to use the bathroom or the locker room with your daughter. You happen to be friends with the parents. It seems to create a sticky situation. But how do you handle this issue?
Okay, so let's separate it into two parts.
Okay.
So one is how would you handle it as a parent, and also two is how would you help your child in that situation as well. So if we separate it that way, I think we can come up with really great advice for parents. And mom to mom,
Yes.
I have 3 children as well.
I don't even know if she has a daughter. I wanted the question answered.
I've got 3 children. Our oldest is in college right now,
Nice.
high schooler and a middle schooler. So these issues definitely hit home for us personally as well as professionally. And I think every parent wants to know and have support of what to do with this. So
Right.
one, I would say talk to other parents. I know that sounds so simple as advice, but it creates support for how to handle these kinds of unique situations, right? So talk to each other, talk to parents. The second thing I would say is your child, so let's talk about the child's perspective in this type of scenario. Your child needs to be able to be in a safe environment and in a safe place. And the school is obligated to provide that type of safe environment and safe space and place for your child. So if your child is in the space where they are not comfortable sharing a locker room with a child of the opposite sex via their biological sex, right? And identity and biological parts, private parts, then that child actually the school has an obligation to allow that child to be in a different locker room, to have a private space to change or a private space to go to the restroom. And you can, again, I'm going to use the word assert again, but you can assert yourself as a parent, notify the school that your child is not comfortable and does not feel safe in the environment that's being created or policies the school's creating on this, and that your child would like to change in a different locker room and or be in a different restroom. Now, the other thing that a parent can request as well is for the school to provide restrooms or locker rooms that have stalls, right? So that there's, covering, there's no opportunity or event that could happen where a child is exposed to another biological, another child to see their body parts. I mean, we have to kind of, mom to mom, we got to kind of lay this out, like what we're really talking about here.
Yeah.
So I think safety, that's one part, alerting the school what your child feels comfortable with. And then the next component of this as well is, yes, you can offer respect to, the sensitivity of other situations for another child who might be having, gender dysphoria, right? That's a very real thing that's happening. Plus, they're being bombarded everywhere they go, whether it's school, socially, online, at the clothing store, via media, music, entertainment. And so children are being, they're confused. Yeah. There's a heavy influence on kids that way. So I would also recommend that parents really up the conversation with their child about these issues. We can't pretend that these issues don't exist. And because they're everywhere for our kids, everywhere they go, one of the best things we can do as parents is to actually start in our home by having an open door of communication, so that the scenario you shared, your child can come home, tell you as a parent or a guardian what's happening at school in this, the locker room or the restroom or whatever it is, so that you can dialogue with your own child about what to do. Because I will tell you, children are really being pressured to comply, and they're being penalized and even punished sometimes at school if they don't.
Right.
So that open door of communication with mom and dad, or whoever the guardian is, has to be, I think, increased right now. And what does that look like? It can look as simple as you as a mom saying to your kid, your daughter, we have a daughter, so we'll use her as an example. How was school today? And have any of these issues come up? Do we need to talk about it? Is there anything you feel uncomfortable with? Asking your child those kinds of questions. Is there anything that you don't feel safe about? Is there anything that was discussed in your class today that made you feel uncomfortable or you have questions about? See, asking these types of questions, yes, ask them to the school too, like what curriculums you have, but even more important, asking our own children
100%
what they're experiencing, and so that door is open for them to say, Mom, this actually did make me feel really uncomfortable, I mean, I've had that experience many times with our children.
Yeah.
Our high schooler or our middle school age daughter and our son who've said, I've actually, our daughter said she has felt ostracized or she has been stigmatized or other kids have called her names and bullied her and our son because they don't believe the same way on these issues. First of all, that's not okay.
Right.
But second of all, that's where our kids need to be able to come home to us and say, Mom, this is what happened today. And then the tools we give to our kids, we need to be their advocates and then help them learn how to self-advocate too, right? But this is where you can do things as parents to help in this type of situation because it's so complicated.
Yeah.
And the kids, the thing, Jill, the kids their ability to speak freely is really being pushed.
No, it's suppressed
right now.
It
right?
is.
Because they're being penalized if they don't. So
and nobody wants to be a bully at school, and no one wants to be a bad guy at school, and it's a real peer pressure thing. It is. But you're absolutely right. We have to equip our kids and talk with them in age-appropriate ways,
right,
so that these conversations are not taboo at home. They can't be taboo.
Yes.
Yeah. We've heard a lot about parent notification policies in the news. A lot of controversy, particularly in the state of California, about whether or not a parent should be notified should their child ask to use a different restroom than their biological sex. Does every single school district have a parent notification policy, or should parents be really pitching and advocating for parent notification policies to be implemented in their schools?
Okay, great question. And I would add one other thing to your question, which is that not only is what you just said happening, but also should parents be notified if the child decides to change their pronouns or gender expression, right? I think that's an important part of this too, of whether parents should be notified or not. So number one, school districts do have notification policies already in place on so many things, right? You get notified if your child has fallen on the playground.
Sick,
okay?
yes.
If your child is sick. If your child is having an allergic reaction or has been hurt in some way or another. You get notified if your child academically is struggling. So every school has some kind of notification policy or another already existing and in place. And that's a school, but also the school districts, for those that are in public school, that would be the case. They have something already there. So one, I would encourage parents to look at what that notification policy already is, that's already existing, because they do exist. And then two, on this issue particularly, I would say number one, find out what the school's policy currently is. Okay? So the school policy might be not to notify a parent if a child is, has expressed that they want to change their gender, their pronouns, or their expression, or even their name. Okay? So if a school has that policy in place, you as a parent are the one responsible to find out what the current policy is. So I'd say that's very, very important so that you're not caught in a scenario where a child is changing their gender, changing their name, changing their pronoun, and the school's policy is not to tell you as a parent. Or
which we've seen that happen in the news,
everywhere. We've seen that happen in many instances in California, right? So you've got to establish that first as a parent, what's already existing. And then number two, if the current policy of the school district does not include informing a parent giving consent, or a parent having knowledge of any of these things changing with their child, that's when, again, we want to show parents you can do something about this. And one of the things you can do is you can request that your school district or your school actually implement a parent notification policy that aligns with federal law, state laws, and the Constitution. And what does that policy look like? Well, it looks like, it's pretty simple, honestly. It's that the parent, the school is legally obligated to notify the parent of any change in the child's gender, gender expression, pronouns, or anything in that space, or gender identity. And the reason why this is so important is because this issue for a minor, first of all, doesn't have the capacity to make decisions till they're 25 and their brain is fully developed, right? Mom to mom. I feel like sometimes our kids, I'm like, Have you done your laundry yet? No.
Yeah, no.
And have you done your chores for the day? No. Have you done your homework? Yes or no. And, they
Yeah.
need help. But like they can barely cook macaroni and cheese sometimes,
yeah.
right? and that being the case, why does that matter? It matters because a child is being pressured to potentially not only change their name, their gender identity expression at school without parents knowing or consenting or being notified at all, but in certain severe cases and scenarios, because of the surveys we talked
Right.
about, a child can then be moved from that scenario at the school where the parent just doesn't know about it to then be given support plans and third-party referrals outside of the school
Yeah.
that then gives the child puberty blockers,
Yeah.
possibly moves them through potential gender changes to their body parts.
Medical advice and procedures.
Medical
yeah.
advice, medical procedures, and these are permanent.
Yeah.
These are permanent changes to these children who are potentially getting pressured by a culture in society that is on a bias right now that only has one form of treatment,
Yeah.
right? The only treatment possible currently, according to like some of these schools in California, all that, is to only affirm the child.
Right.
But where in any of that, Jill, does it even take into account a child's mental health, the child's social, emotional, academic? What if there's something else going on with the child that this is the way the child is expressing because they're not sure how to handle trauma or something serious? Maybe they're being bullied at school.
Yeah.
If those considerations are not part of this and it's only affirm, well, the greatest problem of that is a parent's not involved at all. So how can a parent offer their child support, advice, counsel, nurturing, any of the things that we're obligated to do, of course, want to do for our children, if they are completely cut out of the entire notification process from start to finish?
Right.
It is so dangerous.
It's very dangerous. And that's why the work that you do at PERC is so important, because this is a very dangerous, slippery slope. I want to bring something up with you because I know that you've dealt with it. Character assassination and hate. I know the answer, but how do you address it when someone calls you hateful?
Well, it's hard not to laugh.
Yeah.
We're not laughing about the hate itself being,
Right.
accusatory or the allegation of it. But I think why we're laughing or kind of like sighing a little bit is because it's so not true.
Right.
It's like the antithesis of what really is. We are motivated by love. We're motivated by, the rights and duties we have to protect our children. That's not hateful at all. And I would say there's a really, really big difference between a consenting adult, 18-year-olds or above,
Right.
who choose to change their gender or go through that process. There's a big difference in that than minors being pressured to be a part of society or being influenced in a way that is impacting them as a child, right? Or these things being forced upon them as a child or forced on how they can speak or not speak. So honestly, this whole idea of hate, it really doesn't belong in this conversation.
Yeah.
It's a distraction, I think. It's
It
a
is.
distraction from the real issue, because honestly, this isn't, I know people use, LGBTQ plus, this is not that issue. This is parental rights. These are minors, and we're dealing with an issue that's impacting a child, okay? So there's a lot of love and grace we can give to all children who may be experiencing this, and I would say that would be the caveat. And then for us as parents and our children are also being stigmatized.
Yeah.
They're being told they can't use words or have to use words a certain way.
Or that they are hateful.
Or that they are hateful or bigots, right? I've heard that word before come from my own children who were accused of that.
It's terrible.
How is that I just think it distracts from the conversation, and it's not true. I don't hate anybody. I love, this is part of the work we do is to advocate for people, but the difference again is it's rooted in it. These are minors.
Yeah.
These are children. And the school and the government have no right. They do not belong in the space or in between a child and their parent. That's just fundamental. So if another parent chooses to, there's on this issue, they have a different way they want to handle it with their child, okay, well, that is their prerogative to do so.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that they can force or impose that on our families or the children.
Correct.
And it violates the First Amendment again, some of the fundamental rights that we have related to free speech and the expression of that, as well as religious, sincerely held religious beliefs. So I think these are all parts of the conversation that are essential.
Yeah, it is. And when you talk about our First Amendment and the Constitution and what rights we have, admittedly, I was not as well educated as I should have been about how our system has been set up.
Fundamental, just basic. We are protected, parents are protected by the Constitution with the 14th Amendment. Okay, the 14th Amendment upholds and protects parents' fundamental rights to raise their children as they deem fit.
Right.
Okay, so that's fundamental.
Okay.
Second to that as well is the First Amendment right, which protects parents' ability to speak how they should want to speak, as well as their children. So if in the space of these pronouns and all these things that are being pressured on the children, again, a parent can assert that and notify the school that it's the parent's sincerely held religious belief that this is contrary to what they're comfortable with based on that.
Right.
And they can let the school know that, this is not an anti-discrimination thing. This is not, like you said, in that space, but instead, a parent, again, can assert their First Amendment rights. And then for the child themselves, if a child is being punished, or the school has a policy to punish or discipline children for not using the correct pronouns at school because of the school's policy, this is another space where the parent can also notify the school. A parent notifies the school and the school district and let them know that this is a violation of your First Amendment rights, right? So the school cannot compel your child to speak a certain way. That cannot happen, and it's literally unlawful and illegal for them to do that. So parents just need to know that you have these pillars already built in to help you, and you need to notify the school of that. Okay, so that's going to be part one.
And if the school violates that, does a parent have just cause to bring legal action against that school?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Parents can get legal advice. So in some situations, what might be required is that an attorney draft a letter to the school on behalf of the parent, saying this is the situation, this is the scenario, whether it's the bathroom or the locker room, or not being notified of surveys, or any of these things we've talked about, the pronouns. And the parent can, I would say, kind of flex. It's like, this is where you flex with legal support, because we're on the right side of this when it comes to the law.
Okay.
And there was a case not too long ago in California where the district attorney, a judge, was reviewing, is it illegal for a school to bar parents from, being notified related to a child's gender change, expression, or identity? So in other words, can a school not notify parents about this? And the judge ruled that the school cannot do that. The school cannot remove parents out of the equation, and what that does is it upholds what we already know is true, that parents are protected under the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, the First Amendment, and schools have to uphold that. So I think, yes, there's legal support if there's situations like that happening. And then I will say one other thing too, so first, for example, in California, not only do we have the Constitution, but then we have the federal law, which we already talked about, the PPRA, so parents can assert that information, notify the school of that. And then we have one other area we didn't talk about yet, and that is if a state has basically a sex ed curriculum requirement that comes from the state in their education codes. Let me tell you what we're seeing here in California, and this can equip parents in one other space about it, and that is, yes, there is a law that says there has to be, healthy, in order for kids to be healthy, basically, there's this law that was passed for there to be sex ed curriculum, okay? So that's the base of it. But what the law also says is that curriculum must be age appropriate, medically accurate, and unbiased.
Okay.
Okay? So if those three categories do not exist in the curriculum that's being supplied to and taught to children at school, a parent can also then assert themselves, bring legal action, and show the school that that curriculum they're teaching violates also the education codes
Right.
where it's not medically accurate. I mean,
Okay.
fundamental to what we're talking about. There's, as you can see, that, and then also the fact that it's biased. The gender ideology, that's an idea,
Yeah.
right? It's a construct. It's a cultural construct that's being created right now, and it didn't exist before, right? Like, what, 100 years ago?
Right.
It didn't exist before. That means it's being created right now. So that also leans to help parents understand that there's a bias to it. So if the school's bias is that they're leaning towards one approval or of another on this issue, you can call the school out on that legally and say, hey, this is your bias. You're giving into what we would call woke, like
Right.
the woke culture, woke movement. And it can be challenged in the courts of law. So we have a lawsuit on this right now, where one of the first ones in California, where we're challenging that the school curriculum is violating the education codes that require parents to be notified, and also the curriculum itself to be age appropriate, medically accurate, and unbiased. So I think, to be honest with you, Jill, the reason why I'm excited, going back to the excitement about this, even though it's a serious topic,
Yeah.
I am so excited because every time these big issues come to the forefront, I think that you have phenomenal people and organizations like you guys as well, PragerU Kids,
Thank you.
who are bringing together these tools and resources for parents. And as soon as parents realize they have so much
Yes.
power in their hands, all the things we talked about, all these tips, legally, all of the stuff, they can be an army for good to protect their own children, as well as to be involved in their communities to stop this issue from infiltrating in a way that it shouldn't, because it's already
Right.
gone too far.
Right.
And so let's take it back.
And that is, you have so many amazing tips that are tangible and actionable and really easy to do. I'm going to show this. It's PERC's Parent Resource Guide. I printed it out. It took me about 7 seconds. This is on your website.
Yes.
Repeat your website once again.
It's www.perk-group.com.
Okay, and you can find all sorts of free resources that cite the laws, the education codes, these guides, these steps that parents can take in your school district. If you want to get involved past your school district, you offer that as well at PERC.
Yes, yeah, essentially, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Beyond school district, the issues that we tackle in general, just our fundamental mission is to protect parental rights, it's to protect medical freedom, and to protect children's rights. So those are the three pillars of what we do, why we do it in our mission. And so our work isn't just with schools. It is, of course, supporting parents and children, but it's also, we work at the state level with, when these policies and issues come to the Capitol in California and Sacramento, we work on, legislation and how to help parents get engaged on what to do at that level too, and how to take action, how to use their voice.
You're also on Instagram.
Yes, we're on Instagram. We're at perk-group. It's _perk-group.
Yes.
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 On both
We'll
Instagram
put it
and
on the
Twitter.
screen.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Such a wealth of information, a lot of hope, a lot of positive action, and great advice regarding knowing our rights are already carved into our system. Thank you so much,
Thank you for having me
Amy
here.
Bohn. Thank you. All
Oh,
right.
it was been so great.
Follow-
You're amazing.
Thank you. You too. Follow her if you have. Follow PERC on Instagram. Check out their website for all of the information, so you can read it and print it and really have it at your fingertips, equipped. And if you haven't subscribed to PragerUkids.com yet for free, subscribe so that your children can learn all of these rights that Amy described that are embedded in our American system already. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
It's actually fun to. It's not weird to say it's fun to
No,
talk about these things.
it's fun to know that there's nothing to be afraid of
Yes,
when it comes to
yes.
protecting our kids.
right, because
Yeah.
the issue itself is not really fun.
No, it's not fun.
But-
Neither one of us want to be here, but
No,
we're here
it's true.
happily.
It's true, but I think what I'm excited about is just when you're collaborating together on something like
Yeah.
this, our organization and you guys, Again, change happens this way.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Thank
It was so
you.
fun.
Stay informed and active. That's what we like to say. See you next time.